Song.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Ooh, that worked. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming this afternoon, and welcome to those of you on our other campuses. And thank you to Michael and Media Services and everybody that's helping to arrange those logistics and make it work for us. I'm going to do just a few brief remarks, and then we're going to open it up for the questions, some of which we have received in advance. Thank you. And questions from the floor as well, I think. And I'm going to have Michael and his team facilitate that piece. So first, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for the warm welcome that I've received here at Seminole State College. It's really been wonderful. And I appreciate your patience with me as I continue to learn about the college and our Central Florida region and the city and the county and the school district and all of these things that I'm really anxious to learn more and more about. I told the group this morning that I've been trying to apply my skills as a student to this learning challenge. And I've developed flashcards for the acronyms, and I'm taking notes and doing everything I can to get it to sink in. But I appreciate your patience with me as I try to do that. I come from a college that had a very strong commitment to shared governance, and I feel a very strong commitment to shared governance, and I know that that's a value here at Seminole State College and something that we continue to work on. When I was doing my research for the interview process here at the college, I found reference to exchange of views online. And so then when I got here and started meeting with the leadership of PTech and the Career Service Council and faculty, I said, what is this exchange of views thing? And we decided to reinstate it, but also change it up a little bit. My understanding is in the past that it was primarily with the leadership of each of the employee groups, and I see no reason why we shouldn't just open it up to anybody who wants to come. And we have no set agenda. We don't have a presentation prepared for you or any specific information to deliver. We're really here just to engage in conversation and try to answer your questions. In some cases, we're not going to have a perfectly baked answer to your question or concern, but we're certainly taking notes and taking that into advisement, and hopefully we'll be able to follow up in the near future. And our goal is to do these once per semester, so one in the fall and one in the spring. And I think that's all I was going to say. So, Michael, take it away.
Well, thank you, Dr. Lorenz and executive team for joining us today. For those of us joining from other campuses or at our desks, thank you for being here. And for those in the, for lack of a better phrase, gallery as well. So we thank all of us who were able to contribute questions and other feedback anecdotally and not into our Q&A time today. If possible, I think Dr. Lorenz might also open up to the floor for questions. And for those who are online, you should have received an email from me about an hour ago, showing you how you can also chat in, and Dr. Jill Jones will be moderating that as well. Executive team, thank you again for being here. So the first area of concern, and I summarized it on the sheet, was basically between, I believe, the IT department and our student affairs, and I can probably say something also for whenever we roll out technologies, we have systems that do their jobs. They don't always integrate with each other. So some of the concerns or questions were, is there a way to improve the processes to speed up things like CMFs, or when we have newer technologies, say, used by the Career Development Center called Handshake, or even, is it Onboard, I believe, for student affairs, having those systems talk to each other better, and what would that look like in terms of increasing staffing for those areas as possible to get those things to be integrated better for us when we engage with students?
So I'll take that one.
I figured.
So let me just tell you that PeopleSoft is a software that is off the shelf. We did not write PeopleSoft. The college did not write PeopleSoft. We bought a software that was already in place from a company at the time called PeopleSoft, got bought out by Oracle, who owns PeopleSoft now as a software. If you go back to, for those of you being here long enough, before the days of PeopleSoft, we had a mainframe software. And that was a homegrown system. When you have a homegrown system, you have a lot more flexibility in terms of what you can do with it, in terms of customizing it, in terms of whatever you want to do, just do it. You don't have to check with anybody. The disadvantage to that is that you lose the benefit of best practices around the entire planet. So And also the technology that we had was very outdated. Our system was mainframe based, and once we had 250 people connected, the mainframe roll over, suck wind, and die. So we needed to move into something more modern, and the college engaged in reviewing multiple platforms for to purchase, and one of them was Banner. In fact, somebody mentioned about, let's go out and buy Banner. PeopleSoft, and at the time Oracle by themselves had their own version of a system. The college, not us, made the decision to engage in PeopleSoft. Today, that is the premier software in the United States and around the planet in terms of capability. It uses best practices, but what you lose is the flexibility of customizing. Now, we host PeopleSoft environment here at the college because we were what you call early adopters of that environment 15, 16 years ago. We have the source code. That means we modify some things where we think is appropriate, but we can't go too far from the production system, because if we do, then you have to retrofit everything to make it work. And it generates a lot of work for a lot of people. Those of you who do the testing know this. The other thing that we get with a system like PeopleSoft, any federal mandates we get directly from Oracle. That means anything related to financial aid, which is huge. We will have, in the past, we had to write the code to accommodate every change for financial aid. That comes directly from the federal government. It comes directly from Oracle. Anything that has to do with tax, new tax tables, anything that has to do with compliance at the federal level, all that is included and is part of the system. So that's one of the reasons why we went into a best of class, if you will, software now. With that, having said that, you lose flexibility in terms of what you can and cannot do with it. Now, you mentioned some applications that we currently use from Student Affairs. We have integrated those. But when we buy a company, we when we get software from third party, the first questions we ask, does he integrate with PeopleSoft? And of course, everybody says, like a good salesman, of course he does. And then we come behind it to try to make it work. And it's not as simple as 1, 2, 3. So don't blame the technology, don't blame PeopleSoft, because it's like, you know, you buy a Yugo and try to put a V8 engine in a Yugo, and yeah, it can run, but it'll take you a lot of work to put it in there. I don't even know if it fits. but you can make it, and you can shove it down somewhere in there, and it'll run. So we do those things, and we do day in and day out, and those people who work with the system in the back end can tell you that this software is extremely powerful. And we currently do not use all the features that the system provides for 2 reasons. One, it requires additional resources. Getting back to the issue of not having enough employees, it requires additional resources, it requires additional training, and it requires additional effort. If we were to decide to, somebody mentioned here, why don't we just get something else like Banner or Kronos? 3 colleges right now are going through the implementation of PeopleSoft. One of them, Daytona State College, just finished. It was $15 million. Jacksonville was $25 million, and Miami-Dade is $40 million. So let's say we were to find something better. I don't think we got $40 million, $35 or $50 million in some place. Not to mention the amount of effort that comes along with replacing a system like this. So those of us that survived the implementation of PeopleSoft back then know what that is. And if you've ever been in an implementation of a software, it's called an ERP, Enterprise Resource System Planning System. It is a lot of work, and it's extremely expensive and taxing. And I can tell you that if I were to put the person who wrote this into that team, they will resign before we get the next software update. So, you know, my point is that we are users of PeopleSoft software. We're not developers of the PeopleSoft system. We didn't develop it, we didn't create it, we use it. And we made a decision at this college to adjust our processes and procedures to meet what the software does. And yes, we would love to customize the heck out of this system, but we can't. Because if we do, then you end up the rest of your life customizing and paying for it. So to address the other issue of having additional resources, we have 2 positions that have been vacant for now since February, and we have had 3 failed searches. Just to find people that can spell the word PeopleSoft in the same sentence with I can write code is extremely expensive. And the ones that are applying are already making $120,000, $130,000 for a job that we pay 80 at the midpoint. So we're struggling because the market is such that if you have this type of skills, you're gonna have, it's difficult to find. So let's say, well, how about if we outsource it and hire consultants? The average cost per hour of a consultant is between $150 to $200 an hour. And we do hire those consultants for a very small period of time to get us over the hump. We did it over a period of time for financial aid. We've done it for implementation of things in the business office and in student services, but it's not sustainable based on the funding that we get from the state. So hopefully that helps clarify and make you understand that we wish we could have all the employees in the world to try to make this thing more efficient. And there's a lot of stuff in that software that we're not even touching yet, and that we have access and license to do, but it requires resources to do it. So anybody wants to ask any questions or anything you want to add?
I have a follow-up. It kind of feeds into some of the other questions in here. Since you're having a hard time finding people, would it be an opportunity for someone like who has some kind of skill to learn a job like that, like who's already here to kind of work up to that, like grow our own maybe? Like there's a lot of these kind of comments in this and in our Great Colleges survey, so I just wanted to bring that up as a follow-up.
Thank you very much. By the way, I didn't plan this out. So the answer to that is yes. And a lot of the people that are working here at the college come from inside of the college. And we help them coming from different levels at the college we do it for web development. We actually get our own students. I talk to the faculty and I say, give me your top students, because we cannot afford to hire students right off, employees out of the street at the salaries that we're paying. We can't compete at those levels in the IT level and the IT environment. So we do that already. It's just that we don't have enough of the people, because you're talking about writing code, and if you have never written code from early age, it's not a skill set that you learn, and you know this because you write code. So it's a skill set that it takes a while to learn. The other part you have to understand that PeopleSoft has a proprietary language, so it's not something you're going to find in a class someplace. Now, if you write code, you learn how to write code in anything else. So we do that, and we have hired employees from within, and they're here, and they have progressed, but it's still very limited even from within our own college.
We can improve upon like how we make those opportunities known, or encourage
Sure.
people to take classes.
And we do. As a matter of fact, we have 3 people that are taking SQL classes now from around the college that are not in my department, because they know those positions are available, and they're trying to make themselves marketable and become, possible potential candidates for those positions. So it's a good suggestion. We try to do it the best we can with the positions we have open. Just don't have enough positions open, and don't have enough people that are interested in it internally. So thank you.
Well, just that, thank you for bringing that up, because that's really where most of the colleges are going right now. I just talked to my colleague over at Daytona State. They're having the same trouble. It's everywhere. It's nationwide. The IT market is outpacing our ability to keep up. So we really need any ideas that you have about how do we really go down into different areas of the college and help find those people that want to do this, and help give them the education and training to make it happen. So if you can help us with that too, and thinking about it, we talked to the Career Service Exchange group this morning, and they were talking about career pathing, and so that might be a great opportunity. It's a very different field, but it's the solution that is the best for us right now. And it does provide for a very good career. So thank you.
We're skipping ahead because I have a doctor's appointment. And I swear I did not ask these questions. They just happened to give them to me. So, but there are several questions people submitted about paid family leave. And we actually just got the revised Great Colleges comments. I read them this morning, and this came up several times in the comments also. As you know, Valencia, who's our they pay slightly higher than we do. And they also have a 6 weeks paid family leave for people. So I think people are seeing that Valencia offers paid leave. We have a 30-day waiting period on our short-term disability policy, which I just went through, which is very challenging if you don't have a lot of leave saved up. So I think there's 2 comments here, and I probably saw about 15 times in the Great Colleges survey asking about just the friendliness of our leave policy. And I swear I didn't ask those questions.
So I can definitely start this conversation. Then I would ask if anyone wants to join in, feel free. We do have a very generous leave package here at Seminole State. Especially if you've come from industry, I know that you definitely would think it would be generous. If you've come from even other state colleges, it's generous. Just to give you an example, the first 5 years of employment, you're earning over 9 weeks of leave in a year. That's almost 20% of your working days are leave. So that's a combination of sick, vacation, our spring break, our winter break, all of those combined. I was talking with another employee yesterday that was telling us that her husband works for an organization where they get 2 weeks of paid time in a year, and that doesn't change until you've been with the company for 10 years. And then those 2 weeks, they might not even be able to use them because they have to only take leave at certain times. And if the operation's busy, they can't take the leave. So they were talking back and forth about how our leave policy is so generous. It is difficult when you're planning a leave of some type, like a surgery or pregnancy or some time that you need to be away from the organization. It's especially hard early on if you don't have leave saved up. So we try to help educate and encourage our employees. If you don't need to take time off, especially your sick time, make sure to bank it so when you need it for those types of situations, you have it. As far as the short-term disability policy, I completely agree, Brittany. It was one of the things that, as a benefits group, we've been looking at, and we want to put that out to market and get a better policy for all of our faculty and our staff. So we're looking at that this year. That's one of the charges of the Employee Benefits Committee. So I completely understand that. As far as the paid family leave, that's something that we can definitely look at and price out and see if we're able to do that.
Because Valencia and then UCF has it for faculty. So those are our competitors, right? In terms of, especially like IT and all that kind of stuff. And the other comment on here was bereavement leave. I know we've had several employees lose a immediate family member, and we don't have a bereavement policy here. I lost my dad when I worked for UCF, and I got 3 days paid, which was just nice not to have to take leave when I lost my dad, So I think that is something that people, it doesn't cost the college a lot, just if someone loses their family member, to have that little, instead of an email saying something, I think people rather have the day off to have a funeral. I think that's something that.
Yeah, and so again, we can definitely look at that, but you are able to use your leave that you currently have for that reason, but we can definitely look at it. We're taking notes throughout the whole session. Later on we'll review all of this and be able to get back with you with the feedback. Okay?
Okay, we're gonna jump back up to number 2. And this was in relation to professional employees that supervise part-time staff, and the feeling that sometimes decisions are made on behalf of the part-time staff and those professional employees or their immediate supervisors are not consulted. So it was just a thought of inviting those direct supervisors to consult when decisions are being made so they can speak on behalf of those employees and maybe come to compromise with certain decisions.
For my own education, could you give me an example of what one of those decisions might be, just so I can understand it a little bit better?
Okay. So I'm going to do a hypothetical in my area because we don't have any part-timers in e-learning, so therefore. Okay, so hypothetically speaking, say if we had a part-time instructional technology assistant for, say, faculty support, or maybe we had two or three. And we were looking at numbers, and the decision was made from, let's say, Joni. I'm going to pick on Joni now. Was their supervisor. I'm trying not to personalize it too much. Well, say say Dr. Ross, of course, I'm just really not going to have a job after this, but that's okay. So thank you all. It was a pleasure. Decides, you know, Joni, we need to cut back your part-time employees to just 12 hours a week. Well, but she doesn't tell Joni. She just tells Michelle, who then just rolls it down to Joni. And Joni knows that we need, as what's it, 29 and a half, whatever it is for part-time. We need those hours because of faculty demands, because of student demands. And so in this case, Joni wasn't consulted about something that directly affects her. It was just a top-down approach just to save, not just to save, but to try to get the budget balanced. I think that'd be a good example.
So I haven't done that. So I appreciate the concern, and I'm sure that does happen more than we would like it, that decisions are made and then people are impacted that, you know, didn't have an opportunity to give feedback. So I think we could look for ways to include them in certain meetings, but it may not be practical, just to be honest. I would hope that the people that are in the meeting that are representing that group, it's always my hope that they are going back to the people that work for them and explaining the potential change that's going to happen, getting feedback back, and then bringing it back when we make a decision. So if you feel like that's not happening, you know, certainly we need to talk to people that are in the meeting to make sure that things are trickling down and back up as they need to be. So it's part of, I appreciate you bringing that forward. It's part of our approach to shared governance and trying to hear from all like we are doing today. So I don't know.
Remember, these are all that was a hypothetical situation
Right.
based on factual, by the way.
So let me tell you something. I have had to do what you just described. But the difference is that, and it's usually because of budgetary constraints. So what we try to do is, yes, somebody, you know, we have part-timers working 29 hours a week this semester, and we have to say, you know what, we can't afford this anymore for the next budget year. Can we get everybody to 20 hours or 24? But we tell them way in advance. I mean, I try to tell them at least a semester in advance or even a month or two in advance. And what we do is actually, if a part-timer leaves, we just don't replace it, so the other ones could maybe stay at 29 hours a week or 24, although the hole is going to be there. At the end of the day, you're going to have 29 hours or 20 hours less, and the issue is, you know, either we take care of the ones that are here or take care of the ones that are not here. So we do that, and we come back and say, this is a decision, we got to bring everybody to 20 to be able to afford everyone, or as positions become vacant, don't replace them and then let the other ones come up to 24, 25. It's all about money. Sincerely, when it comes to part-timers, it has to do about budget. It's not about a particular, you know, issue related to the employee, because if there's an employee relations issue, you deal with that differently. But when you cut back hours, such as the example you gave, it's strictly because of budgetary reasons, nothing else. So hopefully that helps. But, you know, obviously, thank you for bringing it up. Well, hopefully, like Laura says, everybody does some sort of communication before we push it down. And hopefully the people that you're telling it to are coming back and pushing back and say, you do realize that if we do this, these are the consequences. So then you're making an informed decision. Does that help? Perfect. Thank you.
So I have the next couple of questions, but they all go together. It does indicate academic affairs, but I think student affairs might be able to chime in as well. But it's both of them are about innovation. And the first one was about implementing cutting-edge career programs. And then the other part of that was partnering with institutions of excellence or national programs to bring some best practices to the college.
You do your part and I'll do the other one.
Sure. So it was written a little differently than that. You know, there was something about hospitality program. Why would we want to add a program that's an old need rather than something cutting edge? First of all, I'm not really sure how to respond to that. I mean, nursing is an old need, but it's still a need. Teaching people to read and write is still a need. So I don't look at it that way. So, but anyways, as far as hospitality, we have done the research and the data, and we do see there is still a need. Even though Valencia has a program, even though Daytona has a program, even with the Rosen College, there is still a need. However, we have gotten approval, SAC's approval for the hospitality management degree, but we probably won't start all 4 of those to begin with. We thought we would be ahead of the game with the old student center and the commercial kitchen sitting there. You know, we had an initial bid that made that sort of affordable, but as we got into it more, it really isn't affordable at this point. So what we may do is start one of the tracks in hospitality management. There are 4 that we've approved: craft food and culinary, wine and beverage, restaurant management, and hotel management. So we may start with that last one. They all have the same core courses, but then there are specialties. So yes, that's an old need that we are considering, but and we're still reviewing and gathering what information we need. Whether we have cutting edge programs, I think we have many of those. And so that's telling me that we probably aren't doing a good job of sharing that information to our internal constituents. We're doing all kinds of things with mechatronics and robotics, and you've probably heard about the Universal partnership. You know, they looked at all the schools in the area and said, you are doing it the way it needs to be done. Hands-on instruction. They're busing employees up to Sanford Lake Mary to take our programs. The same thing to Oviedo for our robotics and mechatronics. All the things going on in construction, I mean, they're using virtual reality and, right? And all these, I could have all of you telling, yeah, I mean, we could do a report out just in this room of all the innovative things that are going on. So that's telling me that we need to do a better job of sharing internally the unique things we were doing. And then finally, there was a mention of, you know, why don't we learn from schools who are Aspen winners and things like that. Well, I think you may not know, we are not eligible for the Aspen Award. I think we would have won it several times over had we been. But our particular district is too wealthy, and so we don't qualify. But I think, you know, you'll know we're one of 5 that are gold, and we've been gold for 2 years. Often people are looking to us for best practices, but that's not to say that we can't make improvements. We have many people out at conferences looking at what the other schools are doing. We are using best practices from other schools and bringing them to the table. The other thing that's mentioned on here was, you know, why aren't we doing guided pathways? Actually, a small group of us is going to an introductory workshop on that in January. Dr. Lorenz is going along to see if that might be a good match for us. It's costly. You know, there's that budget thing again. And it will require, you know, work from all of us, initiatives. And we have all been working pretty hard. And we're all spread pretty thin, but I think, and we're doing many of the things that they preach, but I think we could really benefit from a program like that, and I'll have Dr. Lorenz speak to that, but, so, I don't know.
And Laura, I think it's important to mention that we review every academic program every year.
Every year.
We have discussion, and some of them are hard discussions too, about is it still innovative, do we make changes, and that happens on an annual basis.
I would like to say before I respond to this specifically, I am impressed by the questions that were posed here, and I think the vast majority of these questions really have to do with how can I or we work smarter, better, stronger, harder to make Seminole State College even better for our students. So I really appreciate the flavor of the questions that we're getting. You know, I think that Laura is absolutely right. Other colleges look to us for many of the practices that we have instituted here and think of us as a college they aspire to be like. But I agree, we can also learn a lot from practices across the country. And I'm probably driving everybody around this table crazy because I, you know, read the Chronicle of Higher Education. I think, ooh, shiny new object. Maybe we should do that. But there are a lot of those things that, see? There are a lot of those things out there. And I was actually very involved with Guided Pathways at my former institution, and that became a statewide initiative in California. So I'm excited to introduce it to a group of people. I also don't want it to ram it down anybody's throat, but I think it does show a lot of promise. And we do have many of the practices that are associated with Guided Pathways, like having assigned advisors, many of the practices that we have. And it kind of feels right now like we have like sort of random acts of pathways. And there are ways that we could maybe integrate those with each other and become more knowledgeable about kind of the whole package that is Guided Pathways, so that we're all, sort of rowing in the same direction on that. I also think that we have real opportunities to front load career counseling in different ways when we're onboarding students, and working with our faculty to think about ways that we can make what's going on in the classroom, whether it's English 1 or poli-sci or whichever flavor of math you're in, make it sort of relevant to that student's career goals. So maybe they'll feel, it may help with retention and just feel relevant to what they want to do with their life. So, but those aren't like complete redesigns of the college. Those are things that we can, sort of build upon the strong foundation that we already have and make those tweaks and changes to just keep improving, keep improving, keep improving. We have a contract with EAB, the Education Advisory Board, and through that organization we also get access to best practices from across the country, and they can do webinars or on-site things for us. And I really like that idea of bringing experts here so that more and more people can hear about it rather than always sending people out to conferences. So looking for those kinds of opportunities to bring those best practices in is something else that I'm really sort of keeping an eye out for. So we always want to aspire to be better and do better, but I don't think that there's a single institution or even class of institutions that we have to say, okay, we want to be like them. Because I think many of those same institutions are looking at us and saying, oh, we want to adopt this policy or this practice over there at Seminole State College.
Let me just add, because you mentioned something about student services in there, and Laura is absolutely correct. We have things and we do things here differently than just about everybody else in the entire state of Florida. And you've seen it with this building and the one-stop model, and also allocating or assigning students to advisors. Dr. Lawrence mentioned the EAB. They came here about a year ago, less than a year ago, and had a meeting with 30 or 40 people. And the idea of bringing them here is to share with us best practices around the United States and institutions. There wasn't a single thing these people told us that we were not already doing. It was amazing when we were sitting there, oh yeah, we did that 5 years ago. Oh, we did that 3 years ago. Oh, we've been doing this. And we're sitting in the room, and the person who did the presentation actually ended up meeting with us 2 days later to learn from us so they could teach somebody else. We have also had at least a half a dozen colleges from the state of Florida come visit us to look at what we're doing in student service and the innovative way in which we serve students. And they walk out of here with their head spinning and saying, you are light years ahead of us. So yes, there's enough to learn, and this is why we're going to go to these conferences, and we're going to invite EAB to come here and talk to us about how to deal with part-time students. But there's also a lot of things that we are doing at the college that other people around the state and the nation are looking at us and saying, we want to do that as well. So we are our own worst critics inside of the college, and we know that. So this is why we are, I always say we have a whole bunch of overzealous people working at the college. We want to be the best of the best, and we critic ourselves, but we also need to celebrate the good stuff that we do here. Thank you.
I know you're probably already sick of hearing about it, but we're on the eve of a strategic planning process as well. And I hope that, once we get through that process, and I'm not predetermining this, but I'm hoping that we'll come up with like 3 to 5 strategic initiatives that we can really dig our teeth into. And some of these, innovations that people want to engage in maybe could be part of those strategic initiatives. So keep a little diary of your bright ideas and bring them forward.
And the next topic is creating an ongoing safety and security training. I know recently, especially in advising and other areas, we're seeing a lot of intervention that we're having to have with students, but something more formalized where we have something maybe once a month that will help us to be able to deal with concerns in relation to behavioral intervention with students, some faculty, staff that are having things that they need to talk about, and how can we engage and help on the front lines and help our staff members and coworkers.
Thank you for asking that question, because one of the things we did was, if you remember, it was required for everyone to take the training for active shooter. There's also a program that we have here that we use for Skillsoft. There's about 300 titles in there. So I encourage you to go visit, because there's information in there about what to do in case of emergency and safety and security. But most importantly, we started meeting to create a behavioral intervention team. And we're looking at a software even. What this does is that, let's say Laura talks to a student that has an issue. She logs it in. Then somebody else in the faculty talks to the same student, and so on and so forth, all over the college. Right now, you could have 20 people talking to this person, and we will not know until something really bad happens. Well, the software will aggregate all this and realize, whoops, send you red flags and say, there's a potential issue here. This person is creating issues everywhere they go. So I think you're in that team. Debbie, I'm looking at Debbie Lynch. She's in that team. And they're just started meeting maybe a couple of times, and we're going to start looking. But the goal is to put something in place that you will hear about it more, and hopefully you all will have access to be able to add every time you interact with the student that could potentially create an issue. Meanwhile, always report it to safety and security, always report it to David Lynch or Student Affairs. We have a great office of disability support services. They know how to deal with that. Our counselors know how to deal with that. So don't, like Maxine always says, see something, say something. And the last thing I want to say is the Maxine schedule used to do this and go around all campuses having safety and security meetings, but the attendance was very poor. So we'll go to Oviedo, and there were 3 people. Altamont Springs, 2 people. Here, this campus, 5 people. So, and she was doing it monthly. So we had to discontinue because they were very, very small. And what we heard back was, well, we already looked at the videos. We know what we need to do. We have all these resources online, so we can look at it. But we could start it again and come back and try to give you more, but we need people to attend. And to, That's a good idea. She's saying, maybe we can have some specific topics, so that way it's not a camp presentation, but it's also in response to what the topics are. So that's a good idea.
Just on that thought, it could be a possibility, for example, so whereas it sounds like in the previous system, perhaps it was we're holding this and in a sense, people are volunteering, oh, I'm interested in that, but maybe on this idea of related topics, maybe it's like, okay, so this is a behavioral intervention for, so at a department meeting for our student services, for example, where this is tailored in a sense to the type of things that you would be encountering, or maybe there's one for faculty, so these are classroom style, and that might be a way to ensure participation and kind of
so I encourage you to do that. If there is any specific topic, if you want to invite me or Debbie Lynch or Maxine to any of your meetings, please don't wait for anything to be formally announced. Invite us. I do attend, for instance, I get invited, Faculty Senate invited to do a presentation on cybersecurity, similar to that, it's a specific topic. Or I get invited to multiple department meetings to talk about cybersecurity or access or things of that nature. So there isn't anything that stops you from inviting any of us, to be honest, on any specific topic. If your teams think that you have a question on security or debate, just reach out and invite somebody to participate for 15, 20 minutes. That's what it is. So don't wait for us to formalize anything, because it may not happen right away. So Maxine is always available. We do walk, I don't know if most of you don't know this, we have a safety and security committee, and they walk through every semester areas of the college and make sure that the lights are working, and make sure that the steps, and make sure that things are there in place to protect our employees, our students. So those things happen, just may not know about it, but they're happening. And as a result of those walks, additional lighting gets added, additional cameras get added, additional resources, panic buttons get added. So we do this all the time. And maybe we just don't tell anybody or keep it as to ourselves, because we see it as part of our jobs. But at the same time, when it comes to security, the less you release, the better off you are. Because you don't want the people that are planning to do something wrong to circumvent and figure out, oh, there's a camera in this place, let me not go there. So it's a catch-22. If you say too much, then it could be used against you. If you say too little, then you get criticized for not telling it.
And do we have a plan to talk of, or to start classes on dealing with mental health issues when we have students in the classroom, or, you know, students coming into the student services area that we may need some training on to how to deal with these situations?
Debbie? And the only thing I'm asking, because she's in the bid team, I don't know if you guys, the discussion's been, I don't want to put you in the spot, but it is, do you have a microphone?
Hello. Everything's about advising and counseling. We're popular, aren't we? Not so much mental health counseling classes. I don't know on the academic affairs side of it. I don't think we've ever discussed that with Laura, but convocation, welcome back, anywhere and any time that we have some kind of campus event, either myself or Jeff as conduct officer, we try to be together to kind of, you know, just ensure that everyone understands what mental health cases we're dealing with, what to do in a situation. I have a situation going on right now, and the faculty today said, I don't know what to do. And I said, well, you do the right thing. You called me. We'll handle it together. As far as, I'm not sure what the question you're asking.
So escalated issues, you know, something's happening right then and they're not able to call you, or you know, just wondering how to, you know, what can they do in the meantime if it's escalating in the supervisor and the students in their office and they can't get to someone else. How can we
trying to see her.
de-escalate and get to you? What, just pointers of future classes, that's all I'm asking. Is that a plan? But you're saying with the bid, that would be something that would be.
Absolutely. The bid is going to be a group where if you can't tell me in the minute, you know, walk out of class, call security, call me, call Dr. Hammond, call Jeff Fortunato. You know, we always say, you know, if it's imminent, call 911. Don't ever be afraid to call 911, ever. There's never been a situation where 911 was called and anybody got in trouble for doing that, you know. But as far as the bid is going to be a, you know, cross-sectional group of people from all, you know, security, myself, conduct, academic affairs. And so we can track student behavior, again, because, you know, many times there's someone going out, you know, something's going out in Heathrow and we're not quite sure about it and we find out a week later, right? Or on Fridays at 3 o'clock. It drives me crazy. Fridays at 3 o'clock and I'm trying to track down a student. So I would say the BIT's going to be actually an excellent move for the institution because we have such a rise in mental health issues right now. We've never had so many Baker Acts since I have worked here this year. Most of my day, I'm leaving advising and I'm leaving performance funding and say, sorry, I've got counseling. I've got to go handle something. So if there's ever an opportunity that somebody wants me to come talk to their department, come to their staff meeting, you know, show up at an event, I'm there. I don't mind doing that at all.
I think this is a really, really important point, and we all feel much more confident when we have some training on these issues, and they are escalating. And frankly, most of us, when we decided to go into whatever job we're in at the institution, did not think this was going to be part of our jobs. So I'm listening to all of these comments. I have some resources in mind from my previous experiences that we may be able to launch here to try to get it so it's not all on one person or one team to equip the rest of us, but bring in some resources so that we can have training on a more regular basis. And sometimes when you get things in bites, it's easier to sort of integrate into your day-to-day work. So I'm taking all this in and thinking about things that we could do to make it a more regular thing, so that we all feel more confident in de-escalating and diffusing situations and getting students the help that they need.
One question, real quick. Students, with all the issues and situations that are taking place around the country, one of the things that's been coming up with our student governments and our students, if there's a chance of doing like a simulation on campus, like an active shooter type thing. I know some colleges that do that type of thing. They combine with like the local sheriff department or the police department, basically have that kind of so the students know what to do. Because I know I was here a couple of semesters ago when we had the issue where the campus was kind of locked down and everything, and our students, some of them didn't know what to do. And it was one of those situations where people were running one way or the other, and we just didn't have any idea. So has that been something that we thought about, or something that we think about doing, or maybe that can be done?
We do one of those exercises every year, every single year. And we pick a different side every time. And it brings about between 150 to 250 law enforcement, firefighters, and all that. And students are part of it. The problem is that, as usually, students graduate, they're not here, so the new wave didn't get to see it this time, they were not in this campus, and every time it's a different scenario. So as part of our emergency response team, and what we do, it is now a regular process, because it's actually sanctioned by the Department of Homeland Security that we must do it. So it's not a question of if we should do it or not. We also made the active shooter training available to students, so they can view it at any time. It's there for them to see. The problem is like I just said, students come and go, and by the time we get the next wave, they have never seen it. We do the emergency test and the phones. We don't do that because we like to interrupt people's days. We do it so they get used to knowing that it's only for that purpose and that purpose only. So the difference between panic and being prepared is that, being prepared. So people who are prepared don't panic, they act. People who are not prepared, the first thing they do is panic, and then they don't know what to do. So our goal is to try to make everyone aware of what's going on. And those exercises with law enforcement, in fact, we were the first college in the entire state of Florida who ever done that. And we've been doing it for the last 7 or 8 years in a row. One exercise every single year. It just happens to be a different exercise. And we've done about 3 or 4 specifically for active shooter. The other part is that the Sheriff's Office and the Emergency Operations Center from Seminole County, they practice this 3 times a year, and guess what? They use our facilities. So they're very familiar with this, and they do it when there's nobody here sometimes. They rent space at Altamont Springs. They rent space, not rent, but they ask to use our space. And they're very familiar. We have people from the Sheriff's Office, and they walk our campuses almost every 2 to 3 months just to make sure that when somebody calls 911, they know how to get there. So all those things happen in the background at the same time. The PIOs, meaning the public information officers, also participate in that. So hopefully that's something. We don't publicize it as much because the idea is not to publicize it. Because if we can plan for emergencies, then, tomorrow is an emergency. So we tell the faculty or the students like hours before it happened. And we evacuate them. We have evacuated complete campuses before.
So just to be prepared a little bit more, everybody sees the red flip chart that's in every office, it's in every classroom. If you work in that office or in that classroom, that has very specific information about what you do in an emergency. Familiarize yourself with that, because that's your go-to when you have an emergency. My team obviously jump in and put out messages, but we have very carefully with Maxine and with Dick and others compiled that so that it's a really quick reference guide, and that's what you do.
In fact, I hear from faculty members that they do the first class, the first day of class. They talk the first 5 minutes about that red book right there. And they grab it and they talk about that, which everybody did that. But I know faculty members have told me that's the first thing they do the first day of classes, and let the students know if there's an emergency, we're gonna go to that guide. And they make them aware of that. They make them aware of the emergency phones, and they make them aware of call 911 if we have to do. So they spend the first 5 or 10 minutes of the class one time, just letting the students know. We wish everybody did that, and I always tell the faculty, please tell everybody. It's just about, making them aware. And again, see something, say something.
So it sounds like we've got a tremendous amount of infrastructure for that, so we might already be doing this, but an idea that came to mind, so when we're doing those events, is it filmed? Do we make a video about it? We might even have the students in our RTV classes. No?
It goes back to the same issue I told you earlier.
Mm-hmm.
The less you say, the better off you are. Because the issue is that it's like hackers, and I'm going to the IT instead of the,
Mm-hmm.
the people, the perpetrators, whoever's going to do this, they're looking for a way to bypass your infrastructure, to bypass the things that you, and we have a lot, believe me, we have in the back end. We don't communicate it on purpose, because fine, if we tell you guys what's going on and what you have in front is great, but that means somebody else out there that we don't want him to learn is also learning it, and then they find a ways to bypass it. That's the difficulty, and again, like I said earlier, is if you do, it could backfire, but if you don't, then you get criticized for not doing it. So I'd rather be criticized. Thank you. Thank you. If you have not downloaded the free application app from Lifeline, please do, because it really can save your life. We have had reports of students who in their personal life were having issues, and that application saved their lives. Because it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be here. It could be anywhere anywhere in the United States, and in fact, it also works in some countries. So if you're anywhere in the United States and you activate that, they're gonna send the closest, they're not gonna call the Sanford 911 to send there. They're gonna triangulate where you are, and they're gonna send the closest 911 service to your location. So please download it. It's free. The college pays for it for every employee and every student. We only have about a 30% adoption. We wish we have more. But in that, you can communicate. You can send text messages. Hey, I just saw a guy, send a picture. So there's a lot of things in that app that we can use. And we promoted it. Marketing and the team makes a great effort. We tell the students in orientation. And we just, it's free. And the college pays for it. And we take care of it on your behalf, and it can save your life. So, and we communicate when we do the test for the phone, the text messages. We also send Lifeline email and text. So,
okay, I have the next couple of questions, and they're human resource questions. So we're gonna move around. It's your turn, May. The first question, and I'm going to ask both of them so you can answer them all in one setting. The first question deals with develop an official college policy on flex work hours and location. The 4-day work week, for example, in the summer is one of the reasons one of the persons who wrote this question came to this institution. And then the second one of you can talk about basic staffing needs for being off. For example, real quickly, staffing needs are frequent concerns in many departments. HR determines that additional personnel are not needed based on the amount of leave time used by personnel. I'm going to put a question mark because I don't know if that's true or not. HR calculates that the accumulated taken leave time of everyone in the department equates to 2 additional persons. So if you can just talk about flex time and staffing needs and hiring, that would be great.
Okay, so the first question was about potentially having a 4-day work week kind of year round, I think was the question. There's only one of the 28 colleges that does that. I don't know if our board would be necessarily in favor of that. And I don't know if that's best for our students, just because we do have so many classes that occur and work. We can definitely look into it. But I also want to be realistic. I don't know if that's something that we, James, you look like.
The question is not about the entire college moving to a
Oh.
four-day work week. It's about for select departments where it could be appropriate
Oh.
for consolidating for them or
I
having
see.
work from home options.
I see.
So
Okay.
that's the
So
question.
it's more global in nature. Okay.
Not about the
Okay.
operation of the college.
Got it. So in general, HR has been working on a flexible work policy arrangement. We agree with you that there needs to be, with the ever-changing world, with our ability to, be on our phone or be on the computer, there's certain areas that are not forward-facing, student-facing, that you can do your work and that people are doing right now. We often have CTS. I'm sure you saw the emails that they've been working, trying to fix some of the issues. That doesn't just happen Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30. I mean, they have to work at night. They have to work on the weekends to resolve those things. So we already have a workforce that's doing a lot of these things. We just need to codify it. So agree with you. And that's a great tool to attract people to come work here as well, a more flexible work environment. So we are working on that, and hopefully we'll have something soon that we can start moving forward in a policy form. But to be realistic, that won't apply to all. Because again, if you're forward-facing, student-facing, in person, that's going to be difficult to work from home. But we can look at some of the other opportunities that you mentioned. Back to the 4-day work week, though, for just a second. It's too bad Brittany's not here because I wanted to kind of joke with her a little bit. My hot button is anytime anyone tries to put us up against Valencia, because I'm always like, oh yeah, well we got this and Valencia doesn't have that. So, I've been rattling around, because she mentioned that Valencia has the 6 weeks paid. I just want to say a couple things that we have that Valencia does not. And that is that we do offer a 4-day work week in the summer. And those of you that have worked at Valencia before, that they work 4.5 days in the summer. So there you go, Seminole State, one for Seminole State. And then also our SPD benefits are richer and greater than they are at Valencia. And we also have a program where if you attain a degree and it's beyond the degree that was required for your position, we give money into your base. And also we offer SPD benefits to our part-time employees. So I just wanted to share a couple wonderful things that we do that Valencia does not. And then to answer the second part of your question, Gerald, that was really about the staffing, which I thought was such an interesting question. And I loved that you said question mark, because you even thought that sounded a little strange. So HR does not determine staffing for departments. Just want to put that out there. I want to say it again. HR does not determine staffing for departments. So did you all know that, or is that a shock to you? You knew that. Right. Okay. You knew that. Okay. So the way that staffing is determined is really based on historical perspective of how you've been running your department, and anytime you want a new position, you just advocate that in the budget development process. So you do that through SPOL, you do that through the budget process, and Rick, if you want to talk about that, feel free. Because then it's looked at on the whole college perspective of where do we want to put additional resources. So I was like, oh, they think HR has so much, more power than we do, and we don't have that kind of power. So that was a question that I had for you all, as to maybe the backstory of that question, or where was that coming from, so I could kind of better understand it. Because they said something about leave and calculating leave, and if people are out on leave, then so I don't know if anyone can elaborate on that, but I did want to just say staffing is really a budget issue, and you have to put forward your case via SPOL as to why you need the additional resources, and then it's looked at globally, not just individually.
So Robert's passing. What I'll do is I'll go back and see if I can determine who wrote that, and do some feedback one-on-one, and then maybe bring it forward to you or the greater whole.
Sure. Anytime you're talking about staffing, again, I'm very simple-minded. I think of, the budget as a big pie, and compensation represents about 80% of that pie. Okay, and compensation is comprised of two things: it's salaries and benefits, but it's also the number of staff you have and the rate that those staff are being paid at. So everything's in competition. So if you want more staff, it probably means less salary dollars available for everybody, or vice versa. So finding a true balance is very difficult, and that's the struggle we go through every year, is trying to come up with a good balance that meets all of the college needs, but also meets the employee needs by compensating them fairly through both in the salary and the benefit areas.
We had another really quick comment for HR. Somebody mentioned, as the chair of an interview committee, you're personally responsible for sending out the regret letters, which can sometimes become a bit of an awkward situation when it's an internal candidate. So this person was asking if they would be able to send regret emails from an HR department email account, maybe, instead of their own email address, especially when it has to do with an internal candidate.
So I saw that question yesterday, and I would like to dialogue on it a little bit and not just give you my answer. I'd like to hear from you all too. I think it's important. But that is true. That is our current practice, that the manager of the screening committee sends out the regret letters. And the rationale behind that is we're all about relationships at Seminole State, and I think that's what sets us apart from other institutions. I know some of you have worked for other institutions, larger institutions. We really have more of a familial experience. We really get to know people, and we frequently receive positive feedback about that we're more personal. And so if the hiring manager is the one the screening chair is the one conducting these interviews, it really makes sense that they would sit down. They've already had that connection, and sit down and be able to really articulate some of the matters that happened during the interview. They would be able to do that much better than HR. We weren't sitting through that process. We didn't know. You could really give helpful feedback. You could say, Sabrina, you did fantastic in these questions, and we noticed that you struggled a little bit in this area. So that's part of the reason, is just you're more familiar with the individual. You have that personal relationship. I saw the suggestion of perhaps sending it from like an HR mailbox. To me, that feels very cold. It feels very impersonal. One thing, if I could say it to everyone, especially since a lot of these people are on committees and you have the ability to interact, is talking with people and sharing with them these thoughts, to me, are a great thing. I don't want to hide behind where you don't know who sent this email. I want to be able to have a conversation with you, because our career here is dependent upon working with each other and forming relationships. And I might be on a screening committee with you, and you might not be the person selected, but maybe I can help you get prepared for the next committee, rather than HR, who hasn't been involved at all and really can't give you firsthand knowledge of what was said, what was discussed, or how to help you. This was internal, helping our own internal people. Mm-hmm. Yep, good question. Because we do want, we tell people a lot, we do want our internal people to get the feedback that they deserve so that they can move forward. If that's their desire and they want to do that, we want to help them. It's also a great opportunity for the person to have a tough conversation. We talk a lot about, at Seminole State, lead from where you are. And it's okay to not supervise someone and still have a hard conversation. You'll grow from it. You'll learn. You can practice with us in HR. We're here to help you. But really, you'll walk away from that feeling like, wow, I handled that. That was difficult. But I honestly believe the person on the other side will thank you, having had that conversation, rather than from getting a cold form email, you were not selected for this position. That just doesn't feel good to me. I don't think that's how we should treat people.
right. All right, so this is I think we're jumping around to numbers in no particular order at this point. So this one's on quite a different tack. This is about perhaps looking at opportunities for corporate education, corporate college as an additional or alternative revenue stream. In part, as a kind of part of our mission where we're serving the community, and okay, I can see the microphone's moving to where it's destined, I guess. But there are a lot of occupations in the state that require licensures, so we could be preparing for those. Or once you're licensed, you need to have a certain amount of professional development each year or over some period of recertification. And so this is something that potentially in PeopleSoft, since we used to have the community ed, there is potentially infrastructure there, though there might be some technological hindrances with that. So it could be that, or it could be out of the box type software, some way to schedule these. A lot of these would be odd term and so might not play well with our credit, but they could be things that are co-listed, for example. So if we had let's say a vocational certificate program and it consists of these 5 classes, and within each of those classes there are 5 modules, but 4 of those modules are topics that might be something that could be co-listed as some sort of a professional development. So let's say you have, let's say we had a carpentry program, we don't, but or home building, and one of those modules is simply about frames, so putting up frames, and the next one might be about putting up drywall, and so a company could feasibly send in 10 people just for the frame building, and that is something that would be working with some of the infrastructure that we already have, but also opening up possibilities for continuing education from the workforce in the corporate sector, in addition to things like licensures and exams. So I'm trying to capture, this is a very long one. I don't know if if you've all read through this, but so a lot of interesting ideas there, but about this idea of incorporating that non-credit aspect of our educational mission in the community. So,
Right. Thank you so much for this question. We are talking about this, and not only for our own faculty and staff who need these continuing education units, but certainly for the community. Right now they can get those other places. Why not come to us if they need CEUs in, whatever, nursing? I mean, we're experts in these areas. So we used to do some of this long ago, and public safety is another area that has a lot of these. We used to do these long ago, and when corporate college sort of went away, all of those went away as well. And so now we're collecting, a list of what are all of those, licensures, those kinds of things that we might want to put in place so people could access. But we need an easy way for them to enroll in those courses, like go online, put your credit card in, and you're done. It's not like that here. And so we need a smoother process to make that all happen. And whoever wrote this question, you probably need to contact me so we can put you on the committee that's looking at this. But absolutely, I think it's a great idea, and it's a great revenue stream for us. We have the expertise. The other partner that's working on this is the Small Business Development Center. Many of you know Amy Kirkland. So she's connected with this as well and is part of this discussion. And of course, that's through the foundation. So yeah, lots of opportunity here and really good ideas. Anybody else?
So to really extend this kind of program, you need a specific business sales team. So we have an admissions and recruiting team that is specifically directed at the programs we have now. Again, it's building the infrastructure, not only in terms of technology and processes, but it's building the manpower who can actually go out and support people like Amy in reaching out to local businesses. I mean, I've been working in this area for 15 years now, and I can tell you, drive up International Parkway and you could probably hit every one of those businesses with the courses we offer. But it's having the resources and the manpower to actually go after those businesses and attract them to our college. But there's great opportunity there. It just needs the structure around it.
All right, so another comment. Let's, yeah. So, jumping back. So 6, I guess, is the next one. Oh, but this is back to HR, isn't it? All right. Well. All right. So, so this comment that we received was specifically about advancement, pathways of advancement, or opportunities for hiring within. So part of the idea here is about employees having some logical progression. In some cases, there are positions at the college that do have, even though they might be serving similar functions, but there's like this position 1, this position 2, so there's some sort of a progression there. And then it also might simply be about promoting from within. So our policy is to open up positions and do the search, and you'll be able to speak about what type of guidelines we might even have from the state or what the case is there. But instead of having somebody like, oh, you were the assistant director, you did a great job, you move into the director position, it gets opened and people submit. So that's, I think, in a nutshell, kind of the 2 concerns here about opportunities for advancement and that internal hiring.
Okay, great. So one of the reasons that positions are open to everyone and people aren't just picked like, I like you, I want to put you in this position, is really to have an equitable and a fair process. That's why you open up positions, whether it was legally mandated or not. I think you would want to do it. It's the right thing to do. It's the ethical thing to do. You know, if you open a position with student success specialists and they're all great, and let's say you're looking for a supervisor over that level, again, if they're all great, is it the right thing to do to just tap someone to take on that position? Did you give everyone a fair and equitable chance to do that? And the way to do that is to open it up. So, you know, we can do things like internal only, and you can apply internal only. Most of the time with our professional positions, we do like to open that up to external as well, but we always look at the supervisor, the hiring manager's suggestion, and we can talk through that. But even opening it up internally allows for a fair and equitable process, again, as opposed to just saying, James, you do a great job, I'm just going to put you in that position. That's not our model here at this college, and that's certainly not the model at most colleges. You want people to be able to compete and also practice their interview skills and have an opportunity to achieve the job and not just be given the job. So that was a little bit about that question. And then the other part of your question, James, if I understand, was more about career pathways. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so that is something that we want to explore and we want to work on. We realize that, you know, I think the sentiment in there was someone has to retire or pass away, or, you know, it's almost impossible for people to be able to move up. And that is the structure. There's less and less positions of responsibility as you move through the organization. So we are looking at that and ways to make that meaningful. We would like your input. That's something that we can work on together. And here, is it just as simple as a 1, a 2, a 3, a senior, a junior, or is it more than that? We want it to be meaningful for people to have a career path and see what that looks like. So would like your input on that, and perhaps we can get a group together to form how do we help our employees best move through the college in a career path? What does that look like? What's motivating? What's meaningful? So I'd like to explore that more.
So for all of you in the audience who might be interested in this topic or might have been one to submit, dialogue to follow.
you a mic, just so people can hear.
As a supervisor, I've been on several committees, and some of the internal candidates have said they weren't able to apply due to the fact that they didn't have any supervisory experience. And I see there's a gap that where we need to be able to, for internal candidates, to have some sort of supervisory experience, but not necessarily call them a supervisor or something of that nature. So I'd like to see something of that if we could arrange that, because I think you'd lose good people to think of having to go outside the college to get something and then come back later if they can. And I know for purchasing, it's always been to move up, you had to move out. And I would rather see being able to let's teach our own people, help them out to make it a career path for them, and not necessarily in just purchasing, but in for the total college experience.
I wanted to go back to the first part of your answer that you gave about that question, was just that not every position is one of those where there's multiples of them. Some of them, it's like you are the one in that particular position, and if you have a supervisor who says, this person's awesome, they're ready to go to the next thing, to me, it's, it seems like there should be some, not treating every position the same. Like, well, this supervisor says so-and-so's ready, so let them have a promotion. Not just giving someone a position, but they have proven in their position that they are ready. Therefore, they've earned it, and we're giving a promotion. So not just, so that could be something about the equity issue. It may not exist in certain positions. It may not be a question of that, but rather, trusting in the supervisor's expertise about their employee to then move them, to advance them to the next level. Yeah.
Thank you. So time is running near the end. I'm going to see if I can cram in two. One, let's see if we can end on a light note after the first one. Again, HR, no job. Anyways. Oh, Rick? Yep. Let me run it down there.
Okay. I'd just like to ask a question actually directed to you, Dr. Lorenz. You talked a lot in your interview sessions, and I was freed up from my job to go to all the interview sessions, so that's about as lighthearted as it gets. You talked a lot about vision mission, followed by strategic planning, followed by budget. And the strategic process, I believe, that we operate in Seminole State College is excellent. The way Mark Morgan runs it, and we pull information from the various areas, I think is excellent. But I was interested to ask you that sometimes we have to get into those decisions about what we're not going to do strategically. So if we're going to do X with a department or a mission, we have to perhaps consider the strategy of not doing things that were existing at this point in time. I think SSC's general motivation is to float all boats, and it's excellent at doing that. There comes a time when, stress levels start to go. So I was going to ask you the question, do you intend to try and look at strategically what we're not going to do or what we're going to flatline so that we can free up dollars to do those 5 or 6 strategic things that we want to achieve as going forward as a college?
Yes, I think we absolutely have to look at that. I haven't been through, one whole cycle yet, so I can't speak too intelligently about the process and everything. I know there's been some debate. People have said to me, I go through the whole process, I put our innovative ideas into SPOL, and every year they don't get funded, so why am I bothering with this? So Rick and I have talked about this quite a bit, and I also understand that we start at zero-based budgeting. Maybe therein lies part of the frustration, because we know we have to pay for the people and the benefits, and we know certain costs. So maybe we should consider rolling over last year's to the new year and then use that as a starting place to reduce or add. But I think through the strategic planning process, in particular, yes, we do need to think about what we're not going to do. I've also had the chance to learn from Laura about the student success summits, and that a few years ago, I think that we picked 5 things and we used the performance funding to fund them. And that's really the right way to do things. But then we've worked ourselves into a situation in which we don't have the flexibility financially to do that. I think I'd like to work our way back to that ideal. So, or go out to our, community partners, corporations, that sort of thing, and say, hey, would you like to seed a strategic initiative? We need to find some way to do those new things so that we don't become stagnant and that we don't all, become that frayed wire that eventually breaks. And some of our old practices, again, I'm not speaking from a very knowledgeable place right now, but may be outdated, and there may be ways that we can work smarter instead of harder. So I don't really know specifically what yet, but yes, I agree with that sentiment.
Thank you.
Took it away. So, judging question and answer time frame, I'm going to probably ask the last one, and this should be actually number 8 on page 5. So currently we have a system for taking courses here where we pay out of pocket up front, we pass the course, then we're reimbursed during the next term, but if it's a back-to-back term, then we're actually paying 2, and so it's like a rolling system. So a proposal came through to implement a different waiver system where if an employee is taking a course, then they get flagged, whether they're using SPD or not, but they get flagged in the system as the fee being waived, and then if for some reason they do not pass the course, even though we have an academic success center, then there's a payroll deduction that would get triggered at the end of the term into the new one. So we were wondering whether that's the exact process or not. That's just here or there, but a easier way for employees who want to take courses here without having to front that cost up front.
Well, no, well, the question.
If it's a Seminole State College course that they're taking, they don't have to put any money up front. That's waived.
But they do get dropped because of SPD, and there's the
No
form.
SPD.
There's a no, but there's a fee waiver.
Oh, if you take more than one class.
Yeah. Right.
I see.
And then the drop period happens because SPD hasn't come through in time for you to meet the non-drop status, and so maybe there's a flag for some state employee with waiting on SPD, whatever that would look like. So the employee doesn't get dropped from the second course. And independent.
And then dependents, yeah. The issue right now, your dependents can take all the classes. You can take 12 credits. You pay up front one time if they get C or better, which is an incentive for the parent to tell the dependent or the husband or the dependent, can you please pass? The issue with providing the money up front is if you were to give people a stipend, then you have to tax it. And you could, but you have to tax it because the schools do it. But because it's a stipend, you have to tax it up front, so it's not a reimbursement. When you pay up front and we reimburse you, your money is already taxed, so you don't get taxed. You get the full reimbursement. If you do it as a stipend up front, then you have to tax that money, number one. 2, legally, we're allowed to do waivers 1% of the enrollment. So we use that 1%. 1, we use it for our athletes. 2, we use it to meet legal requirements from the state of Florida related to military veterans and anything else we have. So we keep some margin of waivers available for instance, we had Deloitte and Verizon move into the area, and the state said, you shall give them waivers. Well, that was part of our 1%. Those are specific waivers that you don't pay and you don't get charged. We have a statutory requirement to give out-of-state waivers for DACA students. So there's a lot of things that goes against all that 1%. So there's limitations from that. The issue of allowing employees to take courses up front and pay for it and hopefully get a C or better So what I always tell people is that use that as the seed for the next semester, and by the way, at the end, you're gonna get your money back. It's just fronting it, so.
I think the original thing that, because I'm the one that actually asked this particular question, unless it got merged with some others, is more about if you're doing SPD for an internal class and you're already using your waiver, could you be added to the do not drop list to where you don't get dropped? So let's say I'm taking some fall term classes and I pay for them in August, no big deal. Well, if I pass them, I'm not going to get reimbursed until January. But if I register for classes when enrollment opens, then I've got to pay for them now, wait for my reimbursement, or I'm going to get dropped from my classes. So if I'm able to pay before classes start, before that fee deadline, great. But I was asking about not getting dropped in that it's very hard, especially for career service employees, to take more than one class because they've got to keep basically 2 semesters of tuition banked as seed money because they're going to get dropped from their classes.
So at that point, to be honest, you are like any other student at the college. And you know, we go back and say, okay, you have your allowance of 1 class that is taken care of that you don't pay. If you take any more classes than that, you are just like any other student that comes to the college and get 3 weeks and goes through the whole process. To try to pinpoint who should be dropping, who shouldn't be dropping, and all that becomes a manual process for once. And second is, that means we're treating you different than every other student. So I don't know I'm looking at our legal person here and see how we protect us from somebody out there coming back. So I don't know.
Well, what if instead of a do not drop,
We
what
could
if
look
it was,
into it.
What if it was like a deferment, like we do for the financial aid? What if it's an SPD deferment? So that might be
That's different.
That might be a way of.
That is something to investigate. That we could do if we could put in as a financial aid deferment. That is a different story, assuming that you're going to get your SPD. And
yeah. Well, that's the same with the financial aid.
it's
I
the same
guess,
with the
and
financial
so-
aid. So let me look into that. That is different, because if we could then defer, you could push the button, defer my fees, and we figure out how do we add it to your awards, if you will. Then I'll have to figure out. That requires a little bit more investigation, but that is different. That is a very different case than don't drop me. Yeah, I hear you now. And it's a timing issue. Now I understand. All right, got it. Yeah, I'll look into that. Thank you for clarifying. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Okay. Well, knowing timing of everything, we're about done with everything. Did you want to end, Dr. Lorenz? Okay, Dr. Lorenz is going to end, but thank you all for your questions that you submitted. Any questions that weren't heard, we've been checking off what has been. We'll do direct emails to Dr. Lorenz's team, and also, if necessary, just bring them back up in the spring exchange of views as well. I think we got like almost everything that was submitted.
Great. Well, thank you all for coming, and those of you out there in cyber world, thank you for your questions. Again, I was really struck by the tenor of the questions, and embedded in them was really, how can we all work together to make Seminole State College even better, which is great. As I said, we plan on doing these once per semester. If you have any feedback on today or ideas about how to improve exchange of views, please let me know. And I'll be in communication with your leadership as well about this. And yeah, I guess that's about it. Thank you very much.